What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Homie Hangout, where we help others move in excellence. And today we're going to talk briefly about this lockdown in El Salvador, right? Which many people have heard of. There's some layers to this, though, that I'm going to kind of get into. And so let's do it. 62 murders in one day, Saturday in El Salvador. Murders in the streets. And it was a lot of transit workers and people riding buses and street vendors and just people kind of out and about living their life. This was not violence between Barrio 18 and MS. I don't want to suggest that nobody that was affiliated got killed, but this was not a gang war. This was a war by gang members on the community. And so why? Right? Why is this bloodiest day in 30 years? Why does it happen? Well, there's some layers to that, like I said, and I'll unpack those in a second. But first, what is this state of emergency that they're under? What does this lockdown mean? And it sort of has two parts. It has the part in the community and it has the part in the jails. So for the community, you lose the right to freely assemble, right? And so, which is a constitutional protection. So that's out the window. Right? You can't just hang out in groups that the government doesn't want you to be in. You also don't have the right to be informed when you're arrested or detained or whatever. You don't have the right to be told why. You also don't have the right to an attorney upon being detained. And the standard 72 hours, where you can be detained for 72 hours, but then you got to be charged or released, which they have in El Salvador. That's out the window as well, right? So anybody can be arrested for any or no reason. They don't have to tell you why, and you don't get legal representation, and they don't really have to put you before a judge. They can just kind of sit you in jail. Now, these orders last 30 days. We'll see if in 30 days, if there's an effort to re-up those. The president, the president has the power. And we'll get into that in a second. He has a lot of power in El Salvador. So, and then in terms of the jails, right? So the food, you get fed twice a day now. And supposedly the menu is going to be reduced and changed to make it less expensive. Let's not kid ourselves. El Salvador does not spend a lot of money on food for prisons. That where the food actually gets to the people in there. I mean, there's scams and corruption, but they do not have an adequate diet to begin with, and now they're going to get even less. And so they're locked down 24/7, so you don't come out of your cell for any reason. Unlike lockdowns here in medium and maximum security prisons, which is where this is in effect in El Salvador, you got dozens of people in cell block sections, sort of. Right. And so you have a cage, for lack of a better term, that's made for maybe 2 people, 5 people. Now you got dozens in there, right? You got 15 people in there. And so now you don't come out of there for any reason. You don't come out to the common area, which is just dirt fields. So that's that's a rough situation. And the rationale is from the president's office and from Luna's office, who I'll talk about in a second, is, oh, you gangs want to act up in the streets? Well, I'm going to punish your homeboys that are incarcerated, right? Keeping in mind that the leadership of both gangs is incarcerated, right? And it's always been that way in El Salvador, right? So yeah, it's life is rough now, or more rough in jail. Even though these murders didn't happen in jail, and then in the streets, there's consequences that affect everybody. Now, it's being said that, oh, this will not impact your day-to-day activities for people, right? That these restrictions are limited to gang members and to stop violence. It remains to be seen how true that is. We'll wait and see. It's an open question. And also they have military, they have the military at the entrances and exits of neighborhoods, which are considered to be under the control of gangs. So they're also blocking who gets to go in there and who gets to come out. And so we'll see how that goes. So why did this happen? Right. And there's one kind of the conventional wisdom, right? The assumption is because the president, right, Bukele, Nayib Bukele, who's a youngster, he's younger than me. He's been in office since 2019, and he started negotiating secretly with the gangs in 2020, right after he took office. And so there's been several reports in media down in El Salvador, throughout Central America, about these corruptions, right, dating back to 2020. Gang leaders being transferred to places, right, getting cell phones, getting extra privileges in exchange for reducing the homicide rate in the streets. And so, which the homicide rate has dropped considerably under Bukele, like 50% or more, right? I think actually just in his first year, it dropped by 50%. And he says it's all because of his national security plan, right? That he's, taking back El Salvador for the average person. In reality, he's just been working with the gangs, right? And he's worked with the gangs for electoral power. So he's winning with he's got like an 85% popularity rating, approval rating. There you go. And so, but that's all because he's working with MS-18, right? And so, for those that seen my video on the 503 program, I'll link to it here, but this is old news, right? In terms of politicians and political parties working with the gangs to try to advance their political agenda, also try to line their pockets and make themselves look good, right? While also, though, empowering the gangs. And then it goes full cycle where, gangs start to argue with each other about, is that what we want to do, blah, blah, blah. Again, check out the 503 video. It explains it a little bit more, just specific to that situation. But that culture is still the same, right? It hasn't changed. And so there was recently, I think in February, maybe this month, right? Within the last couple of months, there was a huge protest of fired prison workers at all different levels, folks that were in management, folks that were guards, folks that provided what in California we would call free staff, right? And since October of last year, that over 500 employees have been fired, right? Luna is the head of the prison system, basically, in El Salvador, right? And so they're getting fired. They basically just get a slip that says, we've lost confidence, right? Osiris Luna, again, the director of prisons, said that some employees are separated due to a loss of trust, quote, because of the functions they perform since they are essential for the national security plan. So here comes up the national security plan again. And it's kind of a buzzword because a lot of people are just like, hey, whatever's necessary for the national security plan, we like what this dude is doing. We like the results of it. We like less homicides. So if that's the reason why, it kind of reminds me of the United States and post-September 11, right? Of, hey, man, if it's to fight terrorism, then we'll kind of sign off on anything. And now some of that might be in jeopardy now. But this dude, man, he's been called out. Bukele and Luna have been being called out for years for this shady stuff. Luna doesn't do anything without Bukele knowing. And Luna's been operating with the director of the prison system. He's been working with gangs as far back as 2015, right? In terms of making arrangements with them and things like that. So he's been in that hustle, right? I found a quote. There's a guy who's the leader of the police workers movement, Marvin Reyes, and he describes the dismissals as a witch hunt. Since they fired middle managers, inspectors, sub-inspectors, guards, it is an illegal process where they were simply given a note saying they're being removed from the position without due process. They have not been compensated, right? So these guards are complaining. A lot of them have their faces covered because of the obvious retaliation they're subject to, right? And multiple Spanish language media outlets that cover El Salvador very well, to be honest, have been addressing this. Luna, it is said, and it's safe to say it's true, right? He's been in trouble, not really in trouble, but he's been accused, and the evidence is overwhelming, of dismantling surveillance systems in parts of prisons, right? Transferring people from one prison to another to facilitate gang meetings, right? Bringing in high-level government officials to have meetings in the prison, bringing gang members to have meetings in other prisons, but then getting rid of the logbooks, right? Trashing those, making those disappear, making employees, agree to not fill them out, right? So the little logbooks that say what visitors are coming in and out, they say don't put this down. This is off the books, so to speak. Also, books that talk about the incomes and expenses of the prison, right? Just the financial books, trash, gone. And he's been caught on video. I mean, there's overwhelming evidence, to the point that the U.S. Treasury Department actually kind of sanctioned him, right? Blacklisted him, right? Blacklisted Luna and a couple other people. Interestingly, not the president. And I think that's political, because they have to know. In fact, they say in their statement, right? The Treasury Department says that Luna is acting on behalf of government officials in El Salvador. But they don't cite the president. And I think there's other reasons behind that, right? But so everything's on Luna's shoulders, basically. And they accuse him of all kinds of stuff, right? Facilitating these secret gang meetings. As you guys will remember from the 503 video I did, the US doesn't really support truce talks, to be honest, down there. And so, of course, they didn't like this because this was sort of secret, clandestine stuff that nobody wanted to talk about. But also stealing, pandemic. So food was sent down to El Salvador as part of like pandemic assistance relief or whatever, from the United States and probably from other places too. And Luna and his wife were snatching up the food and then reselling it, right? And some of that was done through street vendors. Barrio 18th Street was particularly involved in that. That's a whole separate story, right? Which, if you guys are interested, leave me a comment, let me know. Anything that you're interested in regarding, Central America and stuff, I don't know it all, but as it comes to MS and 18, if you guys got questions, leave them in the comments and I'll do my best to address them in an upcoming video. But so back to this situation, right? So there's one instance that was reported in El Faro, right, media. In October 2020, MS leader Gino Milo, right, Danilo Colocho, was transferred from Izalco prison, which is going to sound familiar to some of you guys, to Zacatecoluca prison, to their hospital. And multiple people have been transferred there. There was a doctor who refused to sign off on him being transferred because he has no illness that warrants that. And so the doctor's like, nah, how can I write him up for transfer? He's not sick. So doctor gets fired, a bunch of people get fired, he still gets transferred. And so just things like that Luna's been involved in. Hiring, right? Fraud, in the sense of hiring, quote unquote, a bunch of prison employees, but those people don't actually work at the prison. They do whatever else they do, sit at home, have other jobs, whatever. When they get their paychecks, they give most of that money back to Luna and his wife and his people, right? And so defrauding that way, defrauding through commissary, right? To the tune of millions of dollars. So this dude got his hand in everything. And so the argument is, or what's being put out there the most, is that the gangs, as a leverage tactic, they kicked it off in a very dramatic fashion in the streets to sort of force the president, right, Bukele, back to the table, to renegotiate whatever negotiations they had. And that could very well be true, right? That's what a lot of experts are saying, that they think that's the reason behind it. And stuff like that has happened before, not to this dramatic extent, but through multiple, presidential administrations, this has happened, something along these lines. I think there's another angle though, because Bukele, and I'll do a video on him one of these days, he's kind of a fascinating character, right? He gets elected, and he's a youngster. You guys see the picture in the thumbnail, right, of him doing his little Ronald or Richard Nixon shit, right? So he has been consolidating power in some ways that are being condemned around the world. Firing the attorney general. He fired Supreme Court judges, which isn't supposed to be able to happen down there. You know, a lot of El Salvador's governmental framework stuff after the Civil War in the 90s was influenced by the US, right? So like freedom of speech and freedom of assembly and the right to counsel and that sort of stuff. You know, it sounds familiar because that's how things operate here, or are supposed to operate here. That's how things are supposed to operate down there as well. But so he comes in, he fires judges, he fires the attorney general. He really is just consolidating a power grab on all levels of the government, right? And he has the public approval thus far, right? It's been weakening a little bit, but I think that there's a mentality there of, hey man, whatever it takes to keep the street safe, right? Like, the dude's an extremist, but you know, is he being an extremist in ways that produce results that I like? Well, then I'm not tripping. Do what you got to do, you know? And like I said, some of that's going to come under closer scrutiny now, but he's been able to do whatever he wants. And this, I think there's a chance. It's just a theory of mine. I haven't heard other people really say this, and I could be wrong. So I'm just floating it as a theory, an untested theory, unproven, but something to think about. He's consolidating power now, right? These gangs kick it off. He's on another power grab, suspending the Constitution, right? Or aspects of it. So is this, either he is taking the opportunity and capitalizing on it, right? The gangs went haywire because they want to renegotiate with him, and he's taking this opportunity to grab power, or this was a setup for him to grab power, right? Because think about it, he asserts all this power, he supposedly goes tough on the gangs, right? Which supposedly he's been that way through his whole administration, which is BS. But you know, he's tough on gangs again, and he again reduces violence. Then some of the public is going to love him, and people will sign away their freedoms in exchange for peace, as they understand it, or as they expect it to be. Again, post 9/11 in the United States, right? So I think that could be what's happening. I don't know. Either that, or he just really messed up in his negotiations. These employees leaving, I think some of them were probably hired falsely, and then other ones, you know, he's just cutting them loose because they're not on the team. But I'm not aware of anything that he's done that you know, that would warrant the gangs going out and kicking off the bloodiest day in recent history, right? On civilians. And so we'll see. It remains to be seen. There's other aspects of this that are fascinating and that I plan to explore, but I just wanted to get something quick out to you guys. Let you know, right? Yes, 62 people murdered on Saturday. State of emergency declared Sunday. Affects the prison, affects the streets. Corrupt politicians. You know, it's an age-old story in El Salvador, unfortunately. And so there you go. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you guys think of this. Let me know if, you know, if you're interested in hearing more. For those that are waiting for me to drop this series on the guys who allegedly killed Fat Tone and them in retaliation for the Mac Dre murders, I'm literally waiting on Homeboy to call me right now. And so, you know, so those will still be up, but he's in prison and I got to wait for him to be able to get on the phone. So anyways, guys, help others move in excellence. Help yourself at the same time. That's what homies do. And I'll catch you guys on the next one, man. Take care.